She called him everything in the texts I was never meant to see. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just grabbed my keys and disappeared. A year later, she showed up at my door begging for forgiveness, but the man she wanted back was already gone. It was supposed to be a quiet evening, nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. Just a Thursday night with leftovers in the fridge and a rerun playing in the background. But routines have a way of crumbling when the truth finally forces its way through. Daniel had noticed things slipping for weeks. The distracted smiles. The sudden need for privacy. Her phone never left her side anymore, and she laughed a little too hard at texts she never shared. Still, he gave her space. Maybe too much. He wasn't the confrontational type. He believed in trust, or at least he used to. That night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. It lit up with a name he didn't recognize and a preview of a message he was never meant to see. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're mine. Daniel froze. For a moment, he hoped it was a joke. A spam text. But when he unlocked the phone, what he saw erased all doubt. They weren't just messages. They were pages of a secret life. Her calling him baby. Him calling her mine. Photos. Timestamped locations. The digital map of a betrayal so clear it didn't need interpretation. He didn't yell. Didn't flip the table or scream for an explanation. He just stared at the screen until the version of himself that still believed in her quietly died. Then he moved. He picked up his keys. Grabbed his wallet. Walked out. She didn't even notice at first. The water was still running. The house still humming with ordinary noise. He closed the door behind him, not slamming it, just letting it click shut like a final sentence. He didn't leave a note. He didn't need to. She had already made her choice. He was just respecting it. Daniel had nowhere to go. His phone was still buzzing, maybe from her, maybe not. He didn't check. He just drove. No plan, no destination. Just away. Eventually, he ended up parked outside a 24-hour gas station, headlights off, engine running. He sat there for nearly an hour, staring into the dark. No tears came. Not then. Just numb clarity. He made one call. A coworker, Tom, a guy he barely knew but once shared lunch with on a job site. You got a couch? Daniel asked. Tom didn't ask why. Just gave him the address. That's where Daniel spent his first night post-marriage. On a worn-out couch, surrounded by unpacked moving boxes and the sound of another man's life continuing uninterrupted. He didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how you could spend years building a life with someone who'd already started planning their next one without you. In the morning, he deleted her number not out of spite, but because he didn't trust himself. Hearing her voice again might make him forget what he saw. And he couldn't afford to forget. Over the next few days, he disappeared. No posts. No calls to friends. No dramatic declarations online. He didn't even tell his parents. What would he say? That the woman he gave his loyalty to gave her body and trust to someone else? No. Some truths were too heavy to share, and Daniel had learned to carry weight in silence. Within a week, he had packed up what little he had and moved to a small town an hour north. A place where no one knew his name, where every face was a stranger and every street didn't carry memories. He took a job fixing up old houses. The irony wasn't lost on him, tearing down broken walls and rebuilding something stronger. It made sense. Felt right. His hands stayed busy. His mind, not so much. The nights were the worst. Not because he missed her, but because he missed who he thought she was. There's a difference, and that difference kept him awake. He kept his phone on silent. Kept his life quiet. Day by day, the version of him that needed her began to fade. The one that trusted easily. That believed forever meant something. He buried that man quietly, with no funeral. And for a long time, he thought that was the end. But endings have a way of circling back. He didn't know it yet, but the door he shut that night wasn't locked. Not permanently. And someday soon, she'd find it again. She'd knock. And he'd be the one deciding whether it opened. The town Daniel chose wasn't special. No coastal view, no scenic charm, just quiet. And that was enough. He rented a room above an auto repair shop run by a retired mechanic who asked no questions and offered cheap rent. The walls were thin, but Daniel liked the noise. It reminded him that he wasn't completely alone. Work came fast. The construction crew didn't care about his past. He had hands that worked, showed up on time, and didn't waste breath talking about things that didn't matter. Tearing down drywall, replacing cracked beams, laying new floors, there was something honest about fixing what was broken. You see the damage. You undo it. It doesn't lie to you. The people he met were polite but distant, which suited him. Small talk about the weather, football, gas prices. No one asked about his ring finger. No one knew he used to be a husband. Daniel liked it that way. He never checked her social media, never looked at photos. He assumed she moved on. Maybe she was with him, the guy from the messages. Maybe not. It didn't matter. What mattered was the space between them now. Space that grew wider every day. There were nights, though, when the silence pressed a little too hard. He'd sit on the steps outside his room, watch cars drift past, and wonder if she ever regretted it. If she thought of him. If she felt anything close to the storm she left behind. Then he'd shake it off. It wasn't useful. Regret couldn't fix what had been gutted. One Sunday, he drove to a hardware store just outside town for a specialty tool he needed for a porch renovation. While checking out, the cashier, a woman named Linda, smiled at him and made a joke about the weather. He smiled back. That was all. But on the drive home, he realized something. It was the first time in months someone had looked at him without pity or suspicion, just as a man. Nothing more. That moment stuck with him. Daniel didn't make friends, not really. But he began to be known as Dan, the guy who could fix anything, who worked quietly and never complained, who paid on time. That reputation felt good. It wasn't a second chance at life, it was a new one. Still, the weight of the past never left completely. Sometimes, a song would come on the radio that reminded him of her. A phrase someone used. A laugh in the grocery store that sounded almost like hers. But those moments came and went. He didn't chase them. He let them pass. Months rolled by. The seasons changed. One evening in late fall, he found a box at the back of his closet he'd forgotten about. Inside were a few old photos, a watch she gave him, and a letter she once wrote on their anniversary. Back when love still felt real. He didn't cry. He just read it once, folded it, and threw it in the trash. He was no longer angry. Anger was loud and sharp. What he felt now was different. Heavy, but quiet. A kind of acceptance. Some stories don't get rewritten. They just end. But even in peace, life leaves doors open. It was a Saturday when he saw her name again, by accident. Someone in town, talking about a woman who'd been asking around for a man named Daniel. He pretended not to react, but his pulse jumped. He hadn't heard her name in nearly a year. Why now? 2 days later, she showed up. He was locking up after work when he heard his name. That voice, familiar and foreign all at once. He turned, and there she was. Smaller somehow. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone who had been shrinking for a while and only now realized it. She didn't speak right away. Just held out a photo of them smiling from a trip 2 years ago. A moment Daniel used to believe in. I ruined everything, she said. Her voice cracked. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to see you. To say I'm sorry. He didn't reply, just stared at her. Arms crossed, heart guarded. She stepped closer. He left, she said quietly. The guy, he walked away. Said it was fun at first but didn't want anything serious. Daniel didn't blink. He knew this part already. That kind of man never stays. The thrill dies fast. I thought I wanted more, she continued. But it took losing you to realize. You were the more. She broke down right there in the parking lot. Real tears. Real pain. But Daniel didn't move. Didn't reach for her. He let her talk. And when she was done, she asked the one thing he wasn't ready to answer. Can we just talk? Just one coffee. He looked at her, long and hard. For a second, he considered it. Part of him still remembered how her voice sounded when she was happy. But he didn't say yes. Not yet. Instead, he said something else. Something quiet. Something final. You found me. That's enough for tonight. Then he walked inside, leaving her in the fading light. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay on the small mattress in his rented room, staring at the ceiling as the heater kicked on and off, his mind replaying her voice again and again. Her apology, her face, her trembling hands gripping a photo like it was proof of something worth saving. By morning, he still hadn't made up his mind. Around noon, his phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Just one coffee. I swear I'll leave you alone after. He stared at it for a long time before replying. 1 hour. The diner on Route 8. When she walked in, she looked nervous. Not like a woman hoping for a second chance, but like someone trying to walk across ice that's already cracking. She sat across from him, folding her hands, waiting for him to speak. He didn't. Not at first. I don't know where to start, she said. Start anywhere, Daniel replied, his tone even. I've heard the end already. She nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't come here to make excuses. I know what I did. He waited. I wasn't unhappy, she said slowly. At least, not in the way people think. I didn't hate you. I didn't wake up one day and decide to ruin everything. It just happened. I got lost, I think. He said nothing. She kept going. He was exciting. He made me feel noticed. And after a while, I stopped thinking about consequences. I convinced myself you wouldn't find out. That it didn't mean anything. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't interrupt. I know how that sounds, she continued. Selfish. Stupid. But the truth is I thought I could have both. The comfort of you and the thrill of him. I was wrong. Daniel leaned forward. Did you ever plan on telling me? No, she admitted. Not until he left. That's when everything fell apart. He nodded once. That's what I thought. There was a pause, long, awkward, painful. She tried again. I've been in therapy. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did. I don't expect you to take me back. I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know I see it now. The damage. The cost. Daniel looked at her carefully. And what do you think it cost? Everything, she whispered. He sat back. You're wrong. It didn't cost everything. You still have your job, your friends, your family. What you lost was me. Tears welled in her eyes, but Daniel stayed composed. I came here today because you asked for honesty, he said. So here's mine. I don't hate you. But I don't trust you. And love without trust is nothing. She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand to stop her. This isn't a punishment. I'm not looking to hurt you. But I'm not the man you left behind. That version of me, the one who forgave easily, who looked away from red flags, who waited around hoping to be chosen, that man is gone. She wiped her face, nodding slowly. I thought maybe, she started, then gave up. Daniel stood up, dropped a few bills on the table to cover the coffee, then looked at her one last time. You're not the only one who's been rebuilding. He turned and walked out. She didn't follow. Back in his truck, Daniel didn't feel relief. Or sadness. Just finality. He'd faced the person who broke him. Listened. Heard the truth. And walked away under his own power. That night, he stood in the doorway of his room and looked around. It was small. Basic. Temporary. But it was his. A space he built for himself without lies or apologies. The next day, she sent one more message. Thank you. For listening. For not yelling. I hope you find someone who treats you better than I did. He didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but because there was nothing left to say. Some endings don't need punctuation. Just distance. Days passed after the coffee. Then weeks. Daniel returned to his routine, early mornings, hard labor, quiet nights. He stopped expecting to hear from her. He thought it was done. He hoped it was. But then something changed. She started showing up. Not in person at first, but through mutual contacts. A coworker mentioned she'd asked about him. The guy at the hardware store said she stopped in looking for something, asked if he still came around. Then one day, Daniel got home from work and found a small envelope taped to his door. Inside, an old photo of the two of them at a friend's wedding and a note. I still remember this night. You looked happy. I missed that look. He threw it away. But it didn't stop. Flowers arrived at his job. A card slipped under his windshield wiper. She never tried to confront him again, just left pieces of her regret wherever she thought he might see them. A paper trail of someone trying to rewind time. Then she showed up at his place. Daniel was getting out of his truck when he saw her car parked across the street. She stepped out hesitant. She didn't cross over, just stood there. I'm not here to beg, she called out. I just needed to see you again. He didn't answer. She stepped closer. I'm not asking for anything. I swear. I just want to talk. Just 5 minutes. Please. He looked at her, expression unreadable. Then nodded once, silently unlocking the door and stepping inside. She followed. They sat across from each other in the small kitchen, the air heavy with tension. She seemed calmer than before. No tears. Just tired. I've been trying to move on, she said. Really? But I keep hitting a wall. Daniel said nothing. I thought if I could just show you how sorry I am, you'd at least understand. Maybe not forgive, but understand. Daniel leaned back. I do understand. You made a choice. Then you didn't like the consequences. She looked down. It wasn't about not liking them. It was realizing too late what I'd thrown away. He shook his head. No. You realized what you lost when he left. That's the part you're skipping. She looked up sharply, then fell quiet. I wasn't your plan A, Daniel continued. I was your safety net. And you didn't miss me, you missed the security I gave you. That's not true, she said quickly. Yes, it is. If he hadn't walked away, you wouldn't be here. She blinked rapidly, trying to respond. But the words failed. He stood. You want me to say I forgive you? That we can start fresh? But here's the truth, I did forgive you. That day at the diner. I let it go. But that doesn't mean I want you back. I've changed, she said, desperate now. I'm not the same person. Neither am I, he replied. There was silence again. But this one felt different. Like a curtain falling. She finally asked, is there someone else? He paused. Not because he was hiding anything, but because he realized the answer didn't matter. There's someone, he said carefully, who made me realize what peace feels like. And how easy it is to lose it when you let the past sneak back in. Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry. Not this time. I guess I hoped I could still fix it, she said quietly. It's not broken anymore, Daniel replied. It's just gone. She stood slowly. Looked around the room like she was trying to memorize it. Then turned to him. I won't bother you again, she said. I'm sorry. For everything. He nodded. I know. She walked out without looking back. That night, Daniel sat outside on the steps. It was cold, but he didn't mind. He watched the road for a while, the taillights of her car fading into the distance. He wasn't angry. Not relieved either. Just done. And that, he realized, was its own kind of freedom. Weeks turned into months. The town didn't change, but Daniel did. Quietly, steadily. His work expanded. He started taking on side projects, restoring small cabins and abandoned homes people had given up on. It was honest work, no pretending, no posturing, just raw structure and new beginnings. It made sense to him. People noticed. His reputation grew. The man who kept to himself became the man people trusted. Not because he was loud or charming, but because he was consistent. And in a small town, consistency is currency. One Friday evening, Daniel got a call from the local community center. They were renovating a playground and needed extra hands. He agreed. Not because he had time to spare, but because it felt right to help build something that wasn't just his. That weekend, he showed up early. As he unloaded tools from his truck, he heard someone call his name. It wasn't her. It was a woman named Sarah, a volunteer coordinator who joined the town a few months earlier. She was kind, sharp, and didn't ask questions that weren't hers to ask. They worked side by side all day. Dug holes. Set posts. Shared quiet smiles when the job got tough. At the end of the day, she handed him a bottle of water and said, "You're the only one who didn't complain once." Daniel shrugged. Complaining doesn't change much. She laughed. Yeah, but it helps some people pretend they're trying. He smiled at that. It was the first real one in a while. The connection wasn't instant, but it was steady. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other more at the grocery store, at the cafe, at the hardware shop. No tension. No history. Just mutual presence. It felt light. He wasn't used to that. One afternoon, after another volunteer project, she asked if he wanted to grab coffee. He hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of caution. Then he said yes. They sat in a booth by the window watching cars roll by. She talked about her job, her move, her small town adjustment. He listened. When she asked about him, he didn't lie. He gave her the broad strokes: used to be married, moved to start over, found peace in fixing things. She didn't flinch. Didn't look at him like a project or a puzzle. Instead, she just said, "Sounds like you've already done the hard part." Later that evening, Daniel walked home and thought about that. The hard part. He used to think it was the betrayal. Then he thought it was walking away. But now he knew the hardest part was not letting the past dictate who he had to become. And he'd done it. Sometime later, he received an envelope in the mail. No return address. But he recognized the handwriting. Inside were the signed divorce papers. Finally, a single sticky note attached. "I understand now. Wishing you peace like you wished for me." He didn't cry. Didn't feel vindicated. Just exhaled. Not relief, just release. Daniel kept the note in a drawer for a while, then eventually threw it out. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer needed to. By spring, his name was listed as a lead contractor on a town restoration project. Sarah still showed up to help on weekends, and now sometimes they'd grab dinner after. Nothing rushed. Nothing owed. One day, she asked him if he ever thought he'd end up here, small town, rebuilding houses, quietly rebuilding a life. No, he said, but I think this is where I was supposed to end up. And he meant it. Because Daniel had learned something most people never do. Healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from refusing to let broken promises break you permanently. He hadn't gotten closure from his ex. He'd gotten closure from himself. By walking away. By choosing dignity over drama. By refusing to chase someone who didn't choose him. That was the real victory. And now every nail he hammered, every wall he fixed, it wasn't just a job. It was proof that some things, once rebuilt, are stronger than they ever were before.